Okay, first thing and foremost when you work with carbon fiber like this is either wear a dust mask or work with your materials wet or underwater. I don't like running the water forever and stand over a sink because it kills my back. So basically, I just take an old Tupperware container there that's wide enough to put my parts in to rinse them and work over that. Now, rubber gloves, a must. This gets very, very messy, and you take a chance of getting splinters and just all around bad. Carbon is bad, just remember that. Anyway, the tools that I use for this is my little container of water, some diamond files. I have one for the flat stuff and one for the round stuff. I finish it off with one of these foam filled emery boards. I use the fine side, that way it doesn't leave jagged edges, or well, not jagged edges, but rippled edges on your carbon. So I'll finish with that after I do the filing under the water and all. And then of course your paints and your brushes. For this one, I'm going to outline the arms with fire engine red, as I usually do, and I'm going to do the frame parts, the top and bottom plate edges, in this purple. This is new, I'm going to try this, not sure how it's going to work, but for most part, the standard issue Testes model paint, great stuff. Now, first thing you do when you do these is put your frame together. Put it all together and make sure all your parts line up. There's no cracks or anything that you're not happy with, because there's nothing worse than going through all this, starting to assemble it, to find out one hole does not line up correctly. Trust me, you'll drive yourself bonkers. And once you do that, if you paint it and scrape the edges and all that, you pretty much are not going to get a return on it. That being said, looking at this carbon for this quad, this carbon is amazing. And you can see the nice layering in there. No rough. The edges are kinda dulled down a little bit, not as dull as I like it. You know me, I cut myself for Bill's Law, it'll get me. So I'm gonna just basically lightly round down the edges, smooth them off, and then what I'll do is I'll take the Crazy Glue, the super glue gel. I use the Crazy Glue brand, and just coat the edges. So if you hit the corner or something, it's less chance of it delaminating. That, and it also gives a smoother surface to apply your paint with, because once you get the glue on there and you let it dry, you just lightly sand it, you can make them very, very pristine. And again, the carbon on this, I mean, it's solid. I don't have my micrometers or my calipers to measure them, but it's all good stuff. Now, for this build, I got the racing arms. I wanted to do the freestyle, but they were out of them, so for expediency, I'm going to do a race build. So we're going to see if we can keep this pretty light and see where we go from there. Alright, anyway, starting the process. Basically, I take the file, dip in the water, dip the edge in, and it's just real light. It doesn't take much. Just that little bit. You can already see the water discoloring. You keep the file wet. You don't have to soak down your gear or anything like that. Make a big old mess. Clean your file frequently, otherwise they tend to, like anything else, gum up. Just a very light downward stroke and slide it along the edge. It doesn't take much pressure. You don't have to dig into this like you're your carbon wood sculptures. Just make sure you get all the way around the edges. And then again, the other side. You can hear the difference when you're filing. You'll hear it gets all grippy when you first start, and when it's rounded, the tone changes just slightly. So this is all you do. I'm going to do all these parts and save time on the video and editing and all that. I'm not going to show the entire process of the whole thing. I'll get it all done to this point here. And be careful feeling the edges. Kind of go down. Don't go along this way. You'll know real quick when the glove's cut if you missed the spot. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Dry it off. Move on to the next one. Alright, I will be back for the next stage with the glue after I get done doing all the filing and sanding. Okay, everything has been done. The frame has been sanded, washed off, rinsed off, dried. Now it's time to take this stuff here, Crazy Glue Gel, and coat all your edges. Now, I seriously advise you have something to set your parts on after you do it, because A, I guarantee you when you go to pick it up you're going to hit the edge, and B, if you get a little heavy-handed with your glue and you're not paying attention or you're not steady-handed, you will glue that thing to the table. So, that said, have a couple spare things to set this stuff up on as you go. And this is all we do. A very light drop, and then I just take the side of the needle thing there and just spread it on until it's nice and even. It takes a little bit of time, and if you're not careful you will glue your fingers to your parts. So again, rubber gloves a must. Not sure how well detailed this is going to be in the camera, but I'll go through the motions and you can see the process anyway. Again, if you use the side of the tube there, you can work it in. Now I do suggest when you do this, so you don't glue yourself to it, is to do half of each piece and let it sit and dry good before you try to do the other half, instead of trying to fight not touching the edges. Again, just take your time. Doesn't take much, just a little drop. Work it in. You'll see where it gets shiny, and you'll see where it's almost white, where you don't get it. Now, if you can see that or not, sometimes you get a little bit over the edge. That's the glue wicking into where you sanded. So there's no overrun. That edge catches the glue, and we set that down to dry. We move on to the next piece. And the thicker you get, obviously, the more glue you're going to go through. But again, take your time. A little drop. Rub it in. Little drop. Just move it around. Doesn't take long. And usually by the time you make your rounds, the first piece is dry and you can pick it up and go back around to doing it. But it's something simple. It seals your edges. It makes it a lot better on the fingers out in the field, for one. Number two, it makes it a better surface for painting and customizing your builds. And lastly, it wicks in the edges there and helps with delamination. I did this with my alien frame 3 years ago. Have not had a problem with my edges delaminating, have not had a problem with anything of that sort. So this is definitely well worth the few extra minutes it takes to go through and do this. I'll post times on each stage of the process and give you guys a general idea of how much time you're going to spend doing it. Just keep in mind that I'm old, I'm slow, and I'm not rushing anything. I'm just sitting here taking my time, talking to you guys, doing my thing. Hopefully somebody learns something from this and can improvise or come up with a better idea or pass this on to somebody else, and that's how we grow the hobby. Sorry about the lighting conditions. I'm not set up with a pro studio like any of the other guys like Stu and Rotor Riot and all that stuff. Really have no intention to do it. I just figured I'd throw a camera up while I'm doing it and pass along what I do. So I'm not going to sit here again and waste time and walk everybody through every second of this. Maybe for your electrical parts and some soldering tutorials and stuff, but not for the tedious work. Alright, that's the first half of those, so I'm going to let those dry, I'm going to finish them up, and then I'll be back for the painting process. Later. Alrighty, the super glue has dried. See how nice and smooth and shiny that is? Try to catch the angles. But yeah, that's what we're going to be working with. It's amazing what that little bit of extra does to make it nicer, nicer, nicer. So, alright, I'm going to try something new here. Normally I use a fine paintbrush and I drag it. Let's get over here. I'll drag it this way, lengthwise, down the frame so I don't get so much overspill. This is a different kind of paint and it requires lacquer thinner to clean and all that, and I don't have any of that. So I did a test case on a junk frame that I got here, and this method here seems to work good. Just the smallest of a drop, and you want to get your line one drag only, because if you drag it more than once, it tends to leave lines, and you probably have to go back and paint it again, put a second coat. But hey, still do that with the red anyway with a paintbrush, so if I have to do a second coat this way, toothpicks are cheap. And of course, shaky old hands don't help the cause much. Right now I got them resting on my knees, and I'm basically just holding my arms still and steering with my knees to do this. If I try to hold my arms in the air free, I'd be throwing paint waving all over the place. So yeah, this seems to be working out nicely. Not sure how well the dark color is going to stand out on the frame, but in the light it doesn't look too awful bad. And I'm not slopping it all over, so that is a plus. Hopefully it's on camera. I tried painting a flat surface of the carbon with this stuff, but it scrapes right off. I painted the edges that have been glued, and it takes a bit to scrape off, so you won't have to be repainting a whole lot if you do happen to use this paint over the Estes model paint. Like I said, I prefer the Estes model paint. It's cheaper, smaller containers, so I'm not having it dry up or settle as much. And the paintbrushes clean out nicely with Dawn dishwashing liquid and warm water. Well, like I said, toothpicks are cheap, so this method is not so bad. Now, little hint here. When you do your painting, rounded edges like this that tend to get nicked first, if you want, you can go back and do second coats, but I found that tends to chip if you get it too thick. So it's better to just one coat it like this if you can, and then I rebuild my quads just to clean them out and make them pretty again about every 3 or 4 months anyway. It's good to do that to check on the condition of your gear and make sure your wires are good and everything's still up to spec. But alright, that's it for the purple. I'm going to do that piece in the bottom plate, and then I'll be back with the red to do the arms.